I used to be the kind of person who never said no to adventure. Back in the summer of 2017, a group of us, 5 friends who met through a local spelunking club in Tennessee, decided to explore a lesser-known cave system tucked deep into the Appalachian Mountains. It wasn't a tourist spot. This cave had no lights, no safety rails, and no official name. Locals just called it Dead Man's Mouth. Charming, right? According to local legend, the cave got its nickname after 2 amateur explorers vanished in the 1980s. Their bodies were never found, and no one searched too deeply after that. It was just another spooky story told around campfires, the kind you laugh off. But for us, it was irresistible. Our group consisted of me, Alex, the planner; Rachel, a geology student obsessed with cave formations; Mark, our gear guy who treated every trip like we were climbing Everest; Liam, the loudmouth, always cracking jokes; Sarah, the quiet one, but by far the best at navigating tight spaces. We packed our bags with headlamps, ropes, backup lights, water and food. Mark even brought walkie-talkies in case we got separated. We planned to be in and out in under 6 hours. We entered the cave just past noon. The entrance was a narrow, jagged slit between 2 boulders. Inside, the air turned cold almost instantly. The further we walked in, the quieter it got, as if the earth itself were swallowing all sound. We laughed and chatted for the first half hour, admiring the underground formations. Rachel was in heaven, pointing out stalactites and crystals in the rock. Everything was going smoothly until we reached the split. It was a wide chamber with 2 dark tunnels branching off in opposite directions. We paused. "No map?" Sarah asked, shining her light down both paths. They looked identical, rough stone, dripping water, absolute blackness beyond the beam. "Let's flip a coin," Liam joked, but before we could choose we heard something, faint, like whispering. We froze. "Did you guys hear that?" Rachel asked. "Yeah," I replied, heartbeat picking up, probably wind. But there was no breeze, no air movement at all. The whispers got louder, not words we could understand, but something human-like, almost like someone pleading, desperate. Then, without warning, Sarah walked toward the right tunnel, like she was in a trance. "Sarah, where are you going?" Mark called out, stepping after her. She didn't answer. She disappeared into the darkness. We hesitated for only a second before chasing after her. That's when things started to go wrong. Really wrong. We sprinted down the right tunnel, yelling Sarah's name, our voices bouncing back at us in distorted echoes. The stone walls seemed to close in the deeper we went. After maybe 50 yards, the tunnel twisted left, and suddenly, there she was. Sarah stood still, facing the cave wall, her headlamp dimmed to a flicker. "Hey!" I shouted, grabbing her shoulder. "What the hell are you doing?" She slowly turned her head toward me. "I heard someone," she whispered. Her voice was thin, almost lifeless. It was a woman, crying. "No one's down here except us," Rachel said, her breath shaky. "You scared the hell out of us." Sarah blinked slowly, like she'd just woken up. I don't remember walking away." Mark checked the walkie-talkie. "Still working. We're not too deep. Let's turn around. Something's off." That was the first smart idea we had all day. We retraced our steps, but something was wrong. We should have hit the split after a few minutes, but it never came. The tunnel just kept going and going. Rachel finally said it. "This isn't the same path." Mark shook his head. "No, that's impossible." We didn't take any turns. We stopped walking. That's when the lights started flickering. First Liam's, then mine. Then Rachel's headlamp just died. Pitch black, silent, no air movement, just us and the crushing weight of the cave pressing down from all sides. And then the whispers came back. This time we all heard them, clearer now. They weren't pleading anymore. They were laughing, low, breathy chuckles echoing through the darkness, coming from every direction. Sarah clutched my arm. "They're behind us." Liam turned and flashed his light. There was nothing. No, wait, there was something. On the wall. Carved into the rock were deep gouges like scratches, dozens of them, like fingernails dragged across stone. Rachel stepped closer. Those weren't here before, were they? The deeper we looked, the more we realized the walls were covered in them, like hundreds of people had tried to claw their way out. Suddenly, the walkie-talkie on Mark's belt crackled to life. We all jumped. Then a voice came through, barely audible, garbled, raspy. "Turn, back, don't let it see you." Then static. We stared at each other in stunned silence. "What was that?" Liam asked. Mark looked pale. "That wasn't any of us." Rachel backed against the wall. What do you mean? No one else has a walkie. From deeper in the tunnel, a faint beam of light appeared. It was like another headlamp, flickering. Someone, or something, was coming. And it was moving fast. Run, I whispered. No one moved. The flickering light in the distance grew closer, bouncing wildly like it was being carried by something or someone running straight toward us. Then we heard it. The breathing, heavy, guttural gasps, inhuman, like something with lungs far too large and damaged to be alive. Closer, louder, too fast. Mark didn't wait. He turned and bolted back the way we came. The rest of us followed, feet scrambling against slick stone, helmets bumping the low ceiling. Behind us, the thing kept coming, its light erratic, its footsteps not matching human rhythm. It scraped, dragged, lurched. As we rounded a corner, Rachel slipped on a slick patch of rock and went down hard. I stopped and pulled her up, my heart jackhammering in my chest. The breathing was so close now it felt like it was on our necks. Then it stopped. The light vanished, and the whispers returned. But this time they were right next to our ears. Stay. We sprinted until we finally burst into a wider chamber. I don't know how we found it. It felt like blind luck, but it was just big enough to catch our breath. Everyone was shaking. Sarah collapsed to her knees, clutching her helmet. I saw it, she murmured. In the tunnel, just before we ran. It looked like it used to be a person. We stared at her. What do you mean? I asked. She looked up at me with wide, terrified eyes. It didn't walk. It crawled. But its legs were backward, like they'd been broken and twisted. Its arms were too long, and it wore a headlamp. No one said a word. Then Liam spoke up, breaking the silence. I left my pack behind, back where we stopped earlier. No, I said quickly. We're not going back for anything. But he was already stepping toward the tunnel. I had my phone in there, my backup light, and the spare batteries. Rachel stood. Liam, don't be stupid. A sudden clang echoed through the cave. We all froze. It was the sound of metal, like someone dragging a carabiner across stone. From the same direction Liam was heading. That's my pack, he whispered. I left it with a carabiner on top. He took one more step. That's when we saw it. At the edge of our lights, just outside the chamber, something peeked around the corner, just a sliver of its face, pale, twisted, hollow eyes that glowed faintly in the dark, and a wide, inhuman smile. Then it grinned wider and ducked back into the shadows. The carabiner clanged again. Whatever it was, it had Liam's pack, and it was baiting us. No one goes after that pack, I hissed. Liam stood frozen, staring into the tunnel where the thing had vanished. His mouth moved, but no words came out. Mark pulled him back just as the whispering began again, this time louder, closer and in Sarah's voice. Liam, please help me. We turned to Sarah. She was right there, crouched beside me, eyes wide with terror. I didn't say anything, she whispered, but the voice in the tunnel kept going, pleading, trembling. Liam, I'm hurt. Come back. It was her voice. Same cadence, same soft, desperate tone. Liam shook his head, backing away. That's not her! That's not her! Come on, Mark said firmly. We're sticking together. We keep moving now. We stayed close, moving through the chamber and back into a tunnel. None of us spoke. Every now and then we heard distant footsteps, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, and always just beyond the range of our headlamps. Then we found something that made our blood run cold. A helmet. Just lying in the dirt. Old, rusted. Rachel picked it up and turned it over. Engraved on the inside rim was the name M. Dixon and a date, 1987. This is over 30 years old, she said quietly. Someone else was down here. And never came back, I added. Sarah pointed to the wall beside it. Look, there were tally marks, hundreds of them, etched into the stone, some deep, some faint, like they'd been scratched until fingernails broke, and underneath them scrawled in shaky, barely legible handwriting. It mimics. Don't answer it, don't follow it, don't look at its face. That's when the air changed. It got colder, dense, like the atmosphere itself shifted, and then silence. Not just quiet silence, total silence. No water dripping, no breath sounds, no footfalls. Even our own voices vanished the moment we spoke. Lips moved, but nothing came out. It was like the cave had swallowed every sound. Rachel turned to say something, but her face contorted in confusion. She mouthed something again. Nothing. That's when the lights started to dim. Not flicker, as if the cave was draining them. And then we saw it again, at the far end of the tunnel, just barely lit, a silhouette, crouched, unmoving, head tilted, watching. Sarah pointed, trembling. "We need to go now." But as we turned, it moved, not walking, not crawling. It slid, like a shadow peeling itself off the wall and gliding toward us. Fast. We ran, through winding paths, up crumbling inclines, past narrow crevices we barely squeezed through. Our lights were dying, and the thing followed. Not constantly, but when we paused, it was always closer than before. We finally stumbled into a shaft that looked familiar. Somehow, Mark pointed ahead. The rope we used to drop in, it's there." Relief surged through my chest. We were almost out. Then we heard Liam scream. We turned. He was gone, vanished. Not a single sound, only his helmet left spinning on the ground. The helmet spun for a few more seconds before clattering to a stop. Liam was just gone. No footsteps, no voice, no struggle, just gone. I ran back a few steps, shining my headlamp down the narrow passage where he'd been. Nothing. No movement. No sign of where he went. Rachel screamed my name and yanked me back by the harness. "We have to leave," she cried. "Whatever that thing is, it's taking us one by one." But the whisper came again, his voice now. "Guys, I'm here. I just slipped. I'm okay. Come help." Mark stepped forward, frozen in place. The voice echoed eerily down a pitch-black tunnel. Too calm, too perfect. "Don't," I said. "That's not him." Sarah was trembling. She dropped to her knees and began sobbing into her gloves. Why didn't we listen? Why didn't we turn back when we had the chance? Mark turned to me. "It's using us. Our voices, our faces, our names." He looked back into the black, our guilt. The whispers didn't stop. They began layering, all of our voices, all at once. Pleading, weeping, begging, "Help me, I'm scared, I'm cold, don't leave me here." We moved fast, scrambling up the rope shaft, slipping, crying, gasping for air. Rachel nearly fell when her foot gave way, but Mark grabbed her. The last thing I saw before climbing up was Sarah, looking down the tunnel one last time, whispering, "I'm sorry." Then we were out. The blinding daylight hit us like a truck. We collapsed on the forest floor outside the cave mouth, gasping. Trees never looked so beautiful. Sound had returned, the rustling leaves, the distant birds, the wind, normal life. A world we weren't sure we'd ever see again. Liam never came out. In the summer of 2011, my cousin Nate and I were backpacking across Arkansas, trying to knock out as many lesser-known trails as possible. He was an adrenaline junkie, always chasing haunted places, hidden hikes, and local legends. That's how we ended up in the Ozark National Forest, drawn there by an urban myth we heard from an old park ranger over coffee one morning. He leaned in real close and said, "There's a cave near Devil's Den. Locals call it the Drowned Cathedral. Has a pool so deep it never warms. And if you dive in at night, sometimes you don't come back up." We laughed it off at first, but Nate was already pulling out maps. That's how we found ourselves hiking into the dense woods days later, far from marked trails. The map Nate had was stitched together from rumors, old blog posts, and hand-drawn notes from some spelunker forum. We eventually came upon it, a small, unassuming crack in the limestone. It barely looked big enough to squeeze into, but we did. The temperature dropped instantly, and the air inside felt wrong, stale, like it hadn't moved in decades. The tunnel was long and tight. We crawled for nearly an hour before it finally opened into a vast underground chamber. Our headlamps lit up walls that shimmered with condensation. In the center of the cave was a pool, still, black and perfectly round. Just like the ranger said, the water was so clear you couldn't tell how deep it was. No reflection, just an endless void. I remember whispering, "It's like the water eats the light." Nate, of course, wanted to go in. He was already stripping down to his thermal gear and unpacking his waterproof headlamp. I hesitated. "Something feels off," I said. "Like, we're not supposed to be here." He grinned. "That's what makes it fun." I stayed near the edge, holding the rope he tied to his harness. 10 minutes, I told him. "If you're not back up, I'm pulling you." He nodded and slipped beneath the surface, vanishing instantly. Seconds passed, then minutes. The rope jerked, once, then again. Nothing. I started pulling, slowly, my hands trembling. The rope came up, wet, but empty. I stood there, clutching that soaked, limp rope, heart hammering like a war drum. My light skimmed the surface of the pool, still as glass, not even a ripple, just silent black. I shouted Nate's name over and over. My voice bounced off the chamber walls, making it feel like the cave was mocking me. I even dove in waist deep, frantically feeling beneath the surface, expecting to grab his arm, his harness, anything. Nothing. Just freezing, unmoving water that seemed to swallow sound as quickly as it swallowed light. I was on the verge of climbing out to get help when I heard it. A splash! Behind me, I spun around. Nate was standing on the far side of the pool, dripping wet, completely silent. Headlamp off. Nate! I shouted, rushing over. You scared the hell out of me, I thought you... But I stopped halfway. Something was wrong. His skin was pale. Not just pale, grey. His lips had a bluish tinge and his eyes looked hollow, like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't respond. He just stood there, water pooling around his feet, staring. Nate? He tilted his head slowly, as if trying to remember how necks worked. Then he smiled, but it wasn't his smile. It was too wide, too slow. Like something learning how to smile. Then he spoke, but it didn't sound like him. It's beautiful down there, he whispered, voice bubbling like someone speaking through water. You should see it. I took a step back. Everything in me screamed, run. He reached out a dripping hand, palm open. Come see. Behind him in the water, something moved. A shape. Too big. Slithering just below the surface like it was watching us. I turned and ran. I didn't look back. I didn't even dare to glance at the water again. I just ran. My boots thudded against the cave floor, echoing as the walls seemed to close in on me. I knew I had to get out of that cave. I had to. But then came a sound. A horrible, grinding sound, like claws scraping against stone. It was coming from behind me, fast. I heard it growing louder, closer, and in a blind panic, I leapt toward the narrow tunnel we had crawled through to enter this god-forsaken place. I was halfway through when I heard Nate's voice again. This time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a low growl, thick and wet, coming from the darkness behind me. You can't leave. We're not finished. My heart stopped. That wasn't Nate. That wasn't his voice. That was something else. I clawed at the walls of the tunnel, trying to scramble through the narrow space, but I was stuck. The cave was closing in, and the claustrophobia began to take over. Then the crawl space trembled. The ground shook beneath me, and a horrible, wet slither reverberated down the tunnel. It was close. I felt something, cold and slick, brush against my ankle. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My lungs were frozen. I fought my way out, clawing and scrambling, pushing forward with every ounce of strength I had left. My skin scraped against the jagged rock. Sweat mingled with dirt and blood as I forced myself into the daylight. I barely made it out of the cave entrance before I collapsed, gasping for air, my body trembling. I turned back to look at the opening. Nothing. It was as if the cave had swallowed whatever it was that had chased me. But I could still hear it. The sound of something scraping, slithering, like a clawed hand dragging across rock. I couldn't stay there, not for a second longer. I stumbled away from the entrance and ran into the trees, not stopping until I reached the trailhead. When I finally made it back to my truck, I called for help. I went to the local authorities, but they wouldn't go near the cave without proper backup. We returned the next morning with a search party, only to find that the cave entrance had collapsed overnight. There was no trace of Nate, no gear, no sign of a struggle, just silence. That's when I found the note. Tucked inside the bag I had left behind was a crumpled piece of paper, half wet and stained with something dark. It was written in Nate's handwriting. Don't come back. It has me now. I'll never leave. We're all part of it now. I didn't go back to the Ozarks for months, not until I received a call from the local sheriff's office. The message was simple, but it was enough to turn my blood cold. We found something. You need to come back. I didn't want to. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't just ignore it, especially after everything that had happened. I wasn't even sure if I was looking for closure anymore, or if I was just running from whatever demon had taken Nate. The sheriff picked me up in town, and together we drove back to the woods. This time, there were no more rumors or myths. The local authorities had made it their mission to get answers, and there was a sense of dread hanging in the air. We reached the cave area just as dusk began to fall. The forest was unnervingly still, and the weight of silence made every step seem like a wrong one. When we arrived, the sheriff led me toward the remains of what used to be the entrance to the cave. The entire area had been filled with rock and dirt, but there was a large patch of earth that had been disturbed. At the edge of the newly collapsed cave, I noticed something. A set of footprints, not human. They were too wide, too deep, like claws had gouged into the soft soil. The tracks led into the underbrush, where the trees grew thick and tangled. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The sheriff didn't answer right away. He just motioned me to follow. We walked deeper into the woods for what felt like hours. It was getting harder to see with each step, and the forest seemed to close in around us. I could hear my own breath echoing in the quiet night, but there was something else, a faint whispering. At first I thought it was the wind, but it felt wrong, too deliberate. Then I saw it. Up ahead, in the dim light of my flashlight, I saw a shimmering shape by the base of a tree. I froze. The sheriff grabbed my arm. "Don't move," he whispered urgently. The figure was blurry at first, like a mirage in the trees, but then it became clear it was Nate, or at least, it looked like him. He was standing, still as stone, staring directly at me with those hollow eyes. His mouth was slightly open like he was about to speak, but no sound came. I couldn't breathe. My legs were heavy, as if I were rooted to the spot. My eyes locked onto his face, and for a moment I almost reached out. Then I noticed something strange. Behind him, hidden in the shadow, there was a shape, a form, moving like water. I gasped. A huge shadow, with limbs that shouldn't have been able to move the way they did. The thing slithered in the darkness, dark against darker, and then it was gone. The sheriff pulled me away, dragging me backward, his eyes wide with fear. "That's not him," he whispered. "That's not Nate." But I couldn't hear him. All I could hear was the same whispering I'd heard in the cave. "Come closer. It's so much better here." It was supposed to be an ordinary caving trip. My friends and I had spent weekends hiking and exploring caves in the Appalachian Mountains for years, with no more terrifying encounters than the occasional bat or deep crevice. But this trip, in the fall of 2016, would change everything. The plan was simple. We would visit a lesser-known cave system in the heart of the Appalachian Range. It was rumored to be untouched by tourists, a perfect spot for a group of experienced cavers like us. We gathered our gear, helmets, flashlights, ropes, and set out from the small town of Fayetteville, West Virginia, around noon. We had a rough map of the area, passed down by locals who rarely spoke of the cave and its strange history. As we approached the site, the landscape grew increasingly wild. Thick trees and overgrown underbrush made it hard to find any clear path. We had to scramble through the brush and clamber over rocks, occasionally checking the map to make sure we were still heading in the right direction. But something felt off. The deeper we went into the forest, the quieter it became. The usual forest sounds, chirping birds, the rustling of leaves were absent. The only noise was the crunch of our boots on the dry earth. It wasn't until we reached a large, jagged rock formation that we noticed a strange indentation in the earth, a barely visible entrance to the cave, hidden behind thick vines. It looked almost too perfect, like a mouth waiting to swallow us whole. We paused, exchanging glances, unsure whether this was the cave we had been searching for. But the excitement of discovery overruled any hesitation. We checked our gear one last time, and then with a shared nod, we descended. The cave entrance was narrow, barely wide enough for two people to enter side by side. As we squeezed through, the air became cooler, and the smell of damp earth filled our lungs. Inside, the cave expanded quickly, stretching out into a large chamber with stalactites hanging like jagged teeth above us. The walls were slick with moisture, and the soft sound of dripping water echoed through the cavern. The first few minutes were exciting, each twist and turn revealing more of the hidden underworld. But it wasn't long before we started to notice something unsettling. The cave had a strange hum, a low vibration that seemed to come from deeper within, almost like the earth itself was breathing. At first, we thought it was just the acoustics of the cavern, but as we ventured further, the sound grew more distinct. It was as if the cave was alive, pulsing with an energy we couldn't explain. We paused to adjust our gear when one of my friends, Aaron, called out, "Hey, look at this!" We turned to see him standing near a cluster of rocks, his flashlight pointing toward a narrow passageway hidden behind a small outcrop of stone. The passage was tight, almost claustrophobic, and the air was heavier, as if the weight of the rock above us was pressing down. "Should we go through there?" I asked. Aaron, ever the adventurer, grinned. "Why not? We came all this way. Let's see where it leads." Despite my gut telling me to be cautious, the thrill of discovery pushed me forward. One by one, we squeezed through the narrow gap. The passage was tight, and I could feel the walls closing in around me as we moved deeper. I couldn't help but feel like we were venturing into something much older, something that had been hidden away for a reason. We finally emerged into a larger chamber, but this one was different. The walls of the cave seemed to curve inward, almost as if they were leaning in, surrounding us. The temperature dropped sharply, and the hum, that strange low vibration, was now louder than ever. It was unnerving, and for the first time since we entered, I felt the weight of fear press down on me. The air felt thick, like it was suffocating me. We turned on our headlamps to survey the space, and that's when we saw it. In the center of the chamber, just past a large rock formation, was something I can only describe as an altar. It was a flat, stone structure, unnatural in its symmetry. There were strange symbols carved into the surface, symbols that didn't look like anything I'd ever seen before. That's weird," Aaron muttered. I stepped forward, drawn to it, unable to look away. My mind was racing. There was a chill in the air, a feeling that we shouldn't be here. But curiosity got the best of me, and I stepped closer to inspect the markings. Then I heard something. A soft whisper, almost like a voice carried on the wind. "Leave." It was faint at first, but it felt like it was coming from all around us, filling the chamber with an eerie, almost mournful tone. I immediately backed away from the altar, my heart pounding in my chest. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice shaky. My friends looked at me, confusion in their eyes. "Hear what?" Aaron asked, but I knew what I heard. The voice. It wasn't in my head. It was real. "Let's go," I said, my voice tight. "Now." We didn't need to be told twice. We turned and began making our way back toward the narrow passage we had come through. But as we moved, I could feel the air getting heavier, the hum growing louder, almost deafening. It was like the cave was alive, and it didn't want us to leave. I don't know how long we scrambled through the tunnels, but when we finally emerged into the open air, I could see the sunlight breaking through the trees. We were out.